Few people know that, according to Edgar Cayce, your soul is not just a passive observer of life, it's a recorder. Every thought, every emotion, every action is imprinted in what he called the soul records, and Cayce claimed he could read them. In his deep trance states, he accessed something profound, a field of knowledge where past lives, present struggles, and future potentials were all connected. He didn't predict fortunes. He explored patterns. What he found was unsettling. Many souls kept returning to Earth, again and again, trapped in cycles of the same mistakes. Why? Because they hadn't completed certain lessons. These lessons, according to Cayce, are not random. They are sacred. And in this video, you'll discover what they are and why it's so important to complete them before your time here ends. Edgar Cayce believed that the soul's central mission on Earth is to learn how to love, not in the emotional or romantic sense, but as a deep spiritual force that aligns us with our divine origin. In his readings, he emphasized that love is not just a feeling, but a choice, a state of being that connects the soul directly to the creative forces, what he often referred to as God, the Source, or the Universal Spirit. He described love as the binding energy of the universe, the vibration that holds everything together. Without learning this form of love, Cayce insisted the soul cannot move forward in its evolution. It will return, life after life, drawn again into the material world until the lesson is truly absorbed. Cayce explained that each soul comes into the world with specific lessons tailored to its spiritual growth. And the lesson of love is universal. It touches every life in some form. Whether it's through relationships with family, romantic partners, strangers, or even enemies, each connection is an opportunity to practice love. And not conditional love, but unconditional acceptance, patience, and compassion. He noted that many of the challenges we face are not random. They are designed to soften the ego and awaken the heart. Sometimes the soul must experience betrayal, loss, or rejection, not as punishment, but as a path toward opening to deeper love. One of the most striking points in Cayce's work is that souls can become stuck, caught in cycles of reincarnation because they failed to develop the capacity to love. In several readings, he described souls who were repeating similar lifetimes, encountering the same types of people or challenges over and over again. The reason was always the same. They had not yet learned to respond with love instead of fear, anger, or resentment. Until the soul transforms its reactions and learns to radiate love in all situations, even the painful ones, it cannot move into higher spiritual realms. Cayce also spoke about the importance of self-love, which he did not equate with vanity or selfishness. Rather, he saw it as an essential form of spiritual integrity, recognizing one's divine nature and treating oneself with the same compassion and respect we would offer others. Without love for oneself, it becomes nearly impossible to love others in a balanced and healthy way. And without love for others, the soul remains disconnected from its true purpose. In Cayce's view, love is not optional. It is not a virtue that earns heavenly rewards. It is the very fabric of spiritual growth. To love is to evolve, and to evolve is to return, step by step, to our source. That is why Cayce repeated in countless readings, life gives us the people we need, not always the ones we want, so that we can learn the art of divine love. Until that lesson is embodied, the soul's journey remains incomplete. In Edgar Cayce's readings, forgiveness was not just a moral choice, it was a spiritual necessity. He warned that resentment, anger, and the desire for revenge were not fleeting emotions, but energetic bonds that tie the soul to the very people and situations it wishes to escape. According to Cayce, when we refuse to forgive, we create karmic knots, invisible entanglements that pull us back into similar life patterns again and again. The soul becomes stuck, unable to evolve beyond the pain it clings to. It's not simply about letting go for peace of mind. It's about liberating the soul from chains that extend far beyond one lifetime. Cayce described cases where people's chronic illnesses, emotional disorders, or even physical deformities in their current lives could be traced back to unresolved hatred or vengeful behavior in past incarnations. In his view, what we don't forgive now becomes the lesson we're forced to face later, often in a more difficult form. He emphasized that unforgiveness does not only harm the one who holds it, it spiritually binds that person to the one they refuse to forgive. These invisible threads do not break with death. On the contrary, they persist beyond the grave, drawing the soul into future encounters where the unresolved conflict will re-emerge until the lesson is learned. One of Cayce's most important insights was that forgiveness doesn't mean approval of harm or injustice. It's not about saying what happened was okay. Rather, it is the act of releasing the emotional grip that another person's actions have on your soul. It is choosing freedom over bitterness. Many of his readings revealed that people often carry these emotional wounds so deeply that they don't even realize how much their present suffering is connected to past grievances, from either this life or another. Forgiveness, he said, is one of the hardest but most critical tasks a soul must complete on earth. Life, as Cayce explained, is structured to give the soul opportunities to heal, and that often includes reuniting with those who have hurt us before. The people we can't stand, the betrayals we carry, the grudges we nurture, these are the tests, and passing them means forgiving, even if the other person never says sorry or changes. Cayce stressed that forgiveness is something you do for your own soul, not for the benefit of the other. The act of forgiving transforms the energy around the event and severs the karmic tie. Until that happens, the soul is destined to repeat similar dynamics, with different faces, in different lifetimes, but always echoing the same pain. What makes this even more urgent is that, according to Cayce, forgiveness must happen while we are still in the body. This life, this incarnation, is a sacred opportunity. In the material world, we have the power to make conscious choices. Once we leave the body, our options narrow. We see clearly, but cannot always act. That is why Cayce repeatedly urged people not to wait. To forgive is to move forward. To cling to pain is to stay stuck, not because of punishment, but because the soul, by its very design, seeks wholeness, and forgiveness is part of that design. Edgar Cayce often said, "You won't take your possessions with you, only what you've done for others." In his view, acts of service were not just moral good deeds, they were the true spiritual currency of the soul. He believed that every sincere act of kindness, no matter how small, left a lasting imprint on the soul's journey. In the thousands of readings he gave, Cayce consistently emphasized that service to others was one of the highest expressions of divine love in action. It was the way the soul awakened to its true purpose. But Cayce never suggested that people had to retreat from the world, become monks, or live lives of extreme asceticism. Service, in his teachings, was something anyone could practice, anywhere, in any role. A nurse caring for patients, a teacher guiding children, a friend listening without judgment, even a parent raising a child with love and patience. All these, he said, were forms of soul-level service. What mattered was not the scale of the action, but the intention behind it. Cayce explained that even the smallest act, done with genuine compassion, carried spiritual weight that would remain with the soul beyond death. He also made it clear that service is not a duty imposed from outside. It's a natural expression of the soul's light. When we serve others, we're not losing energy. We're aligning with a higher vibration that feeds us as much as it feeds those we help. Service becomes a form of spiritual nourishment, not a burden, but a blessing. Cayce encouraged people to see their daily lives as opportunities to serve, even in the most ordinary tasks. A kind word, a helping hand, a moment of patience, all these things mattered. According to Cayce, the soul is shaped not by what it gains, but by what it gives. Many of his readings described people who in past lives had lived selfishly or neglected the needs of others. In their current lives, they often found themselves feeling lost, disconnected, or struggling with relationships. He saw this as a spiritual consequence of a lack of service. When we turn inward too much, or act only for our own benefit, the soul becomes isolated. But when we extend ourselves, even when it's inconvenient or difficult, we grow. We become more than who we were. Cayce also spoke of service as a way to heal karma. By helping others, especially those we may have wronged in past lives, we balance energies and dissolve old debts. He described how, sometimes, people are drawn to certain causes or relationships not by accident, but because their soul remembers something that must be made right. In that sense, service isn't just a path forward, it's also a way to resolve the past. What you do for others, Cayce said, becomes part of your soul's essence. Unlike wealth, titles, or achievements which stay behind, acts of love and service follow you. They become spiritual capital that shapes your next experiences, your growth, and even your future incarnations. And the beauty of it, Cayce reminded, is that you don't have to wait to be perfect or enlightened to serve. You can start now, in your family, in your work, in your neighborhood. Service is the soul's most natural language, and through it, you carry forward what truly matters. Edgar Cayce believed that the true purpose of life was not to adopt a fixed set of religious doctrines, but to awaken to a personal, living connection with the divine. In his thousands of readings, Cayce returned again and again to the idea that spirituality is not something external. It is an inner journey, a direct and intimate relationship between the soul and its source. He often said that real religion begins not with belief, but with experience. Through meditation, prayer, silence, and self-observation. For Cayce, spiritual practice was not reserved for mystics or monks. It was essential for every human being. Without it, he warned, a person would become entangled in the material world, forgetting who they truly are. The soul, disconnected from its inner source, could drift far from its purpose, and a lifetime could pass without meaningful growth. He described this as an empty incarnation, a life lived in noise and distraction, but with no true fulfillment. But when people took time to turn inward, even a few minutes a day, something profound began to shift. Cayce taught that inside every person is a temple, and within that temple is a still, small voice, what he called the voice of the Creator. It is not loud or forceful. It doesn't demand or threaten. Instead, it waits patiently for us to listen. And when we do, the soul begins to remember why it came here. He encouraged people to create quiet spaces in their daily lives, not to escape the world, but to connect more deeply with their own spirit. Meditation, he said, was a way to attune the mind to higher vibrations, to open the channel between the conscious self and the divine. Prayer was not just asking for things, but aligning with the will of the Creator. And self-reflection helped reveal the patterns and lessons of the soul, so that growth could become conscious, not accidental. Cayce didn't claim to invent these practices. He saw them as universal tools found in every spiritual tradition. Different names, different symbols, but the same essence. He believed that each person had a unique path, but all paths, if sincere, led to the same source. He warned against dogma and rigid beliefs that divided people or caused fear. What mattered was the living connection, the knowing of God, not just the idea of God. He described many cases in which people felt lost, anxious, or purposeless, and traced their suffering back to a lack of inner alignment. They had jobs, families, routines, but their inner life was silent. Their souls were reaching out, but no one was listening. Cayce believed that this disconnection could even lead to illness, not only mental, but physical, because the body, mind, and spirit are deeply linked. The answer, he said, was simple but powerful. Return inward. Listen. Create a dialogue with the higher self. Ask questions before sleep, meditate on truth, seek guidance in silence. The soul is never truly alone, but it can forget its own voice. And when we reconnect with that voice, something sacred awakens. Peace grows, clarity returns, and the soul once again walks its path with purpose. In Cayce's vision, spirituality wasn't about escaping the world, it was about transforming it from within. The more we remembered our connection to the divine, the more we became vessels of love, wisdom, and healing. And this, he believed, was not only our right, but our deepest responsibility as souls in human form. Edgar Cayce often reminded people of something many tend to forget. We are not just bodies. We are complex beings made of body, mind, and spirit. And when one part falls out of balance, the others inevitably suffer. He referred to this as a threefold system, where the physical, mental, and spiritual are deeply intertwined. Illness, in this view, is not simply a breakdown of the body. It is often a message, a signal that something deeper is misaligned. In his readings, Cayce showed how negative thoughts, emotional stress, or spiritual emptiness could manifest as physical symptoms. He described cases where resentment became arthritis, or where fear weakened the immune system. Likewise, he emphasized that poor choices around diet, rest, and movement could dull the mind and block spiritual awareness. Everything, he believed, was connected. Cayce gave thousands of practical health recommendations: what to eat, how to sleep, when to fast, how to breathe. But underneath all these specifics was a consistent truth. The body is not the end goal. It is the tool. It is the vehicle through which the soul learns, evolves, and expresses itself. If we neglect the body, we limit our soul's ability to fulfill its mission. But if we become obsessed with the body, we also lose sight of the deeper purpose. Balance is the key. He encouraged people to listen to their bodies with respect, not as objects to control, but as instruments of the soul. Pain and disease, he said, should not be met with fear or anger, but with inquiry. What is this trying to teach me? In many readings, he traced chronic conditions back to emotional patterns or spiritual neglect. Healing, then, required more than medicine. It called for inner transformation. But Cayce never promoted guilt or self-blame. He spoke with compassion. The body reflects what we carry inside, but it also offers a chance to change. He believed that every person has the power to realign their system, to bring mind and spirit back into harmony with the physical. Simple daily choices, choosing hope over fear, kindness over tension, awareness over autopilot, could ripple through all levels of being. He also taught that suffering is not meaningless. Sometimes physical challenges awaken the soul. They slow us down, make us reflect, push us inward. Cayce saw this not as punishment, but as opportunity. In the struggle for health, many people reconnect with their higher purpose. They become more present, more grateful, more aware of what really matters. Harmony, in Cayce's view, is not a static state. It's a process, a daily tuning of the three instruments: body, mind, and spirit. When these are in balance, life flows more easily, intuition sharpens, energy grows, and the soul can express its true light. Cayce believed that each person has the ability to find this balance, not through perfection, but through awareness, care, and intention. To live in harmony is to honor the gift of embodiment, to treat the body not as a burden, but as a sacred partner in the soul's journey. And perhaps most importantly, to understand that every symptom, every discomfort, may hold a hidden message, a reminder to return to center, to wholeness, to the path we came here to walk. Edgar Cayce was one of the first well-known figures in the Western world to speak openly about reincarnation. Long before it became a topic of popular interest, Cayce described past lives not as abstract ideas, but as real experiences that shape the soul's current challenges. In his trance readings, he would often trace a person's present struggles, illness, fear, broken relationships, to unresolved patterns from previous incarnations. He saw these not as punishment, but as part of a greater spiritual education. According to Cayce, the soul is eternal and constantly evolving. Each life is like a grade in a school, offering lessons that the soul needs to learn in order to grow. And karma is simply the law that helps those lessons unfold. It's not a cosmic revenge system, it's a precise and compassionate mechanism. What we send out returns to us, not to harm, but to teach. If we sow kindness, we will eventually meet kindness. If we create suffering, life will eventually mirror it back, so we can understand, transform, and choose differently next time. Cayce emphasized that karma is always tied to opportunity. Every difficult encounter, every repeated pattern, every painful emotion is an invitation to see what remains unresolved. He often said that we meet the same souls across lifetimes, as family, friends, or even enemies, not by accident, but because our shared karma brings us together to finish what was left incomplete. That is why certain relationships feel so intense, so familiar, or so challenging. The soul is trying to remember and complete its lesson. But Cayce also warned, if we don't learn the lesson, we come back, again and again. The same themes will repeat, in different forms, through different people, but with the same core. Not because we are being punished, but because the soul cannot move forward until it understands. He said many souls get stuck in certain emotional states: pride, fear, resentment, guilt, and these states pull them back into similar lives until they finally awaken and shift. Importantly, Cayce didn't teach people to fear karma. He taught them to respect it and to take responsibility, to see every experience as a mirror, to ask, what is this showing me about myself? What am I here to change, heal, or give? He believed that even the most difficult karma could be transformed through awareness, love, and forgiveness. That's why he stressed the importance of waking up, now in this life, because the chance to break the cycle is always in the present. To Cayce, Earth was not a prison but a school. The body, the relationships, the daily experiences, all of it was part of a soul's unique curriculum. Some lessons were joyful, others painful, but all were necessary. He believed that the more we avoid our lessons, the more they chase us, and the more we embrace them, the faster we move forward, not only in this life, but in the journey of the soul. This is why Cayce spoke so often of urgency. Not fear-based urgency, but soul-deep urgency. He saw how many people carried heavy patterns from lifetime to lifetime, always postponing the real work. He urged them to use this life wisely, to forgive now, to love now, to heal now. Because what we don't complete here doesn't vanish, it waits, and we will meet it again until we are ready to let it go. Dear friends, have you ever felt that your life is a repetition of an unfinished lesson? If so, which one? If you liked this video, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you soon.